if there's an emergency, your kid's not like being like, let me call mom.
Right.
Real quick.
What is
like,
mom
what are you
gonna
gonna do? Like you can't get in.
No.
This is where I get frustrated.
Don't even open that can of worms.
Like horrifying.
Horrifying. Not allowed to cry or have emotions in your house?
Like, do you really need to know what Zemoglobin 8 is? Or
Oh, Jessica.
everyone has a favorite. Everyone does. Okay, it's Lauren's fave day because we're talking about her fave book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt.
It's Haidt, not hate, which I've been
I
mispronouncing.
don't know that you.
I think I did, but maybe I didn't. Hopefully I didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I know you're listening.
Yeah,
so I'm
you're
really
definitely.
sorry.
Yeah, he's like
I'm really sorry that I
tuning-
mispronounced your name.
tuning in. All right. First, give a little like, I don't know. What am I trying
Elevator
to say?
pitch?
Thank you about what this book is.
Okay. So Jonathan Haidt is a professor.
Okay.
I believe sociology. Don't quote me on that. So he wrote this book about, so basically he was starting to see changes on college campuses in young people, their ability to like deal with life, basically.
Okay.
And so he started doing a lot of research about why that was happening, and based on his research, decided that a lot of it had to do with phones, like the evolution of smartphones
your phone?
and social media. Speaking of, my phone's blowing up once again. So anyway, so all of his research pointed to that like the evolution of smartphones and social media has just destroyed kids' brains and young people.
And this was a college campus? What did you say?
He was seeing changes on college campus because that's where he works, right? And so then he and another professor started doing all this research for like years.
Oh, okay.
And came up with this theory. His first book was Coddling of the American Mind, which is so good. Highly recommend that too.
Okay.
He and the other professor wrote it together. And then this is
book 2.
This was his book. That's just him,
Solo.
Jonathan Haidt. So it's just all about like what are smartphones and social media doing to kids' brains, and then what are the consequences of that, basically.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, we've talked, I feel like, on almost every episode.
Yeah.
So, like some sort of tech, something like like finds its way in.
Yeah.
But let's do some trend stats and facts, I guess, as it relates to this. So, Mountain Middle School is...
Yeah. So, okay. So we're talking, there's a whole chapter in here on phones in schools.
Yeah. That's what we're doing.
Phone bans. So we're going to kind of dissect that. So Mountain Middle School is this school in Durango, Colorado. It was one of the first schools to like officially make a phone ban. Okay. In 2012. 2012. So at the time that they did this, their county in Colorado had the highest teen suicide rate in the state. Okay. So they decided to
restate that. I couldn't.
Okay, so
highest what?
The highest teen suicide rate.
Did it say like girl boy?
No.
Oh.
Highest teen suicide rate in their state, in the state of Colorado. Okay. So they made a pretty strict ban. Phones had to stay in backpacks. And they had very clear rules for the students and very clear consequences if the phones came out of the backpack during the school day.
What were they?
They didn't say. He doesn't say in there like what the actual consequences were. But so and then they just collected data over the course of a few years with this phone ban, and showed like how much, among many other things, like their academic performance improved so much that they ended up with the highest performance rating in the state.
Okay, because the
previously
phones were in the
they had
backpacks.
been struggling. Yeah.
And previously the phones could be just wherever.
Right.
Like
exactly.
on your body or
Exactly.
whatever. Okay. So was that the Mountain Middle School?
Yeah. So that was Mountain Middle School in Colorado. So he uses that like as an example of a school that successfully implemented a phone ban, and then all the improvements that they saw afterwards.
Okay. I'm going to push back.
Sure.
So not on that. Like that sounds, I'm sure that's right. But like if Haidt has like all of this data and this like good like theoretical whatever, well, like that, whatever that Mountain Middle School, like whatever their ban plan was, like you need to be able to replicate it.
Yeah.
And if we don't know what it is, then we can't replicate it.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, I love a phone ban. We don't know how to, like, whatever we've been doing has been unsuccessful. So if you have the answer, like you wrote how many pages is that book? Like why it should be in there.
Right.
So Jonathan Haidt, maybe next book is like how to do a phone ban.
Right.
Okay. So impact of phones in schools.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of reports that are very interesting. So August of 2023, UNESCO, which is United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. You got that memorized?
Sure. Okay. Wait, United Nations Educational United Nations Educational Operation.
Fail. But just say UNESCO, okay?
UNESCO.
So they put out a report saying that, okay, the internet can be helpful for certain parts of education, right? So people who need to do virtual learning for whatever reason, sure, you got to have the internet. Okay. Being able to educate people in hard to reach populations. Okay, sure. It can be helpful.
These are not the two things that are popping in my head though. So like, yeah, but I'm thinking like, okay, you have a research project and you need to research a topic. That's what that was the automatic thought I had.
So they, in their report, they said, but there's little evidence that digital technology actually enhances learning in the classroom.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Okay. Which
meaning like Promethean, like having a Promethean board in the
or
room.
everyone has their Chromebook, right?
Correct.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
They also said in the report, that all of their data that they collected showed that cell phone use was associated with decreased academic performance and more classroom disruptions. Period.
Yeah.
That's common sense.
Yeah.
And that schools also needed to think about what were the potential effects of laptops, Chromebooks, tablets, etc. Like any kind of personal electronic device.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was like another report in 2023 from some other very important smart people group that showed, I mean, this is not that surprising, right? That like there was substantial drops in test scores during the pandemic. Okay. And we all knew that.
Yeah.
A lot of us attributed that to the pandemic. But what they showed was that, no, actually scores were starting to decline long before that in 2012.
Like nationally?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was already a decline happening, but then the pandemic just like, exacerbated it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So then it was like, okay, well, why did this decline start in 2012? I mean, that was about the time that, so smartphones... No, Facebook came out way earlier than that.
Oh, yeah.
But smartphones, I think, came out, this is in one of my presentations, in like 2007, 2008, I want to say. It was like when the iPhone came out.
Okay.
But what they're saying is like around 2012 was really when kids started having phones.
Okay.
Right? Because I think initially it was like adults headphones, right? And then it trickled down over time.
Yeah.
So that's what they're attributing this like the start of this decline. Okay. And then they said that the students who suffered the biggest decline in academic performance were the ones who were already in the lowest quarter of performance scores, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
like
so the lowest
basic.
Performing kids are suffering the most. So what ends up happening is like there's already this like performance gap, and then it just has massively widened.
Yeah.
Over the past 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately going to include, a disproportionate number of like kids from lower income households, minority children, kids with single moms.
And kids with disabilities, huh?
And kids with disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So does it say like why? Like why?
No, but like I've done some research on that, on just like technology in the classroom, which I will tell you, sadly, not a lot of research out there. Okay, which is kind of scary that like
because no one wants it.
I guess.
I mean, academic institutions don't want to be told
There's been such this massive push to get technology into classrooms, and there's so little research on it. So it's
because that's grants. So like all of those. So like I'm gonna call. I don't give a fuck. Verizon. Like during the pandemic, I think it was Verizon, because I worked at Tubman, and God, I think they like it was something about like hotspots or something like that. So that students could have like Wi-Fi or whatever if they didn't have it in their home. But also like Promethean board, all of that shit is like no school is going to turn away money.
Right.
Or gifts. And like, so then they're not going to do research because they know that it's going to be bad.
Right. Well, and it's like, isn't that crazy that it's like probably ungodly amounts of money have been spent on getting more and more and more and more technology into schools. And it's like, what if this is all making it fucking far worse?
Well, it is.
And we have wasted
but no one
all
cares.
of this money.
But I don't think they care.
I guess not. But anyway, so like, you know, the little research I was able to do with what little data's out there, it did repeatedly show that the kids who are, you know, minority kids, the kids who are already in the lowest quarter of performance,
like non-English speaking,
are the ones that suffer even more, and their academic performance goes even lower. With technology. Yeah,
I mean, duh. I mean, I think like it's. And I think I told you about this when I went to a little, private school here. This is like kindergarten, I think. There were like, I don't know, under 10 kids in the class.
Yeah.
And I think it was math they were doing on the Promethean board.
Mm-hmm.
And the expectation was like for these 5-6-year-olds to be like sitting in their seat looking at the Promethean, and like the teacher was sitting next to the Promethean, and like they were expected to follow along and like track and do these like multitask like non tactile.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like and then one at a time would come and like do a problem.
Right.
And so whatever. And so what I saw was just like everyone was distracted. No one was motivated. Bodies were wiggling. No one knew. Like whenever the teacher said like, your turn, Billy, like Billy didn't know like what was happening. And then they switched to science, and it was a hands-on activity. It was like really engaging. The teacher was like floating around the room and like engaging with like each little group, and everyone was on task and everyone was motivated. And so like when you like take the hands out of learning, then like the gap of a kid's ability to like focus, retain, practice, and reproduce just grows.
Yeah.
So if they don't have anything to do with their hands, if they don't have to take a note, if they don't have to like follow along in a whatever, annotate or highlight or whatever, then like they don't have anything to do. They're alone in their brain, and their brain is not going to focus on a board and follow along on a board.
Right. So it just shows you that like, you know, the best way to educate is probably the simplest and the cheapest way, right?
Yeah. But I wonder, because it's like, and I keep saying it's the only school I've worked in, but they, instead of getting like, you know, we got textbooks.
Right.
And they don't do text. No. I don't know. Does yours have textbooks?
They're not old enough to have textbooks yet, so I don't know. How old is your oldest? Wait, why am I thinking so hard about this? He's 8. He's in 2nd grade. Oh. Yeah, so he doesn't have textbooks yet.
Like a workbook?
He does have workbooks. He has physical workbooks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm interested about that because I don't like I remember middle school, like there were no books. Like, it like your book, like if you were reading a book, it stayed at school, like because there was like not enough money for everyone to get, and they can't afford it.
Right.
And so they would get printouts of like whatever the ELA chapter thing was, and then they had to keep up with it. Like the chapter was like 10 pages of a worksheet thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to keep up with it for the week. And like, obviously they're not going to keep up with it.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that money. So we're spending money on tech, but that money could be spent on textbooks.
Right. Which are so much cheaper.
I don't know. I think this is cheap. I think it's cheap.
I don't know.
Because they have all these like box curriculums and they go with the
I guess.
Shit.
But anyway, so that kind of brings up this concept of digital divide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which for a long time was that, the digital divide was that like, oh, these wealthier kids have more technology, and so they're doing better in life.
Mm-hmm.
And the poorer kids don't have access to technology, and so they're suffering.
Mm.
And so there was this push to get like every kid to have their own device, right?
When was this?
I mean, I would say this has been over the last, like, I don't know, 15 years maybe.
Oh, okay.
And now, like he was talking about in the book, how we're realizing the digital divide is actually that the lowest performing kids, if you give them too much technology, they're going to perform worse. And so the divide widens.
Why? Why do they perform worse?
I think that so he talked a lot about how there's less supervision for those kids about what they're doing online, right? And so there's probably a lot of time spent doing non-academic things.
Yeah.
And then all of the consequences that we already know of like what that does to like rewire a kid's brain, right? So then like they're becoming more inattentive, they're becoming more distracted, they're developing more mental health issues, their learning goes down.
And I feel like from a data perspective, like assignments aren't getting turned in, or they're taking longer to complete, or more mistakes are had, or whatever, or being more mistakes are made. I mean, so what? I mean, there have to be some pros
to technology.
Like, yeah.
So, I mean, the research that I did showed that technology does improve learning for like very specific things in school. Okay. Science.
Why?
I don't know the why, but this is like what they found, right?
Science.
Like doing like research on huge populations of kids, tons of schools, that it does improve learning for science.
Okay.
Can. It can improve learning for science. Okay. And it can improve learning for math.
What?
I don't know why, but that's what they showed.
Okay.
However, it's usually
for all
a
ages
detriment.
Or anything? Does it
I mean, it didn't. I don't think it broke up ages, but however, for every other subject, it can be a detriment to learning.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah,
but like I feel like we talked about this a while ago. I think like there are certain kids with exceptionalities that perform better during COVID through virtual learning.
Yes.
Because like the classroom is really distracting.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know.
They were allowed to go at their own pace.
Yep. Allowed to go at your own pace. And it was like not focus, but like I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like they can go at their own pace. And like they're in charge of their pace.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're in charge of.
Like I need to spend 3 hours on math and only 20 minutes on ELA. You know, instead of like having an hour class for that, an hour class for that.
And they don't have to like participate. They don't have to like call. Like I'm calling on you to answer a question. Like that wasn't
and then they could go back and like review things multiple times. Yeah. So I think like for a very specific group of kids. It was a perk for sure. I think for the vast majority of kids, it was not good.
Yeah. And that's not even like that. Now we're talking about computers, but originally, like the whole point. Okay. So phones. Like how should they be implemented?
Phone bans.
Yep.
Okay. So he talked about how, schools have to be really conscientious about the way they do that.
Yeah.
Okay. He says phones need to stay in backpacks or a designated secure place in the school. I say designated secure place in the school.
I agree.
Right? So, like, we do have research now that shows, and I think we've talked about this, how, like, the difference in a kid's attention if the phone's on the desk versus in the backpack versus at the door of the classroom versus somewhere else in the school building.
Yeah.
And, like, their attention span is significantly better if the phone is, like, nowhere near them.
I mean, this is how I think about it. Think about when your kid is 3 and you're about to go to dinner. Babysitter comes and you're still there. Your kid is probably attached to your leg.
Yeah.
Because you're there.
Yeah.
So proximity.
Yep.
And then the more, like the farther away you get, the more the more the kid is able to like regulate on their own.
Right.
And so it's similar.
Yeah,
because it's like the phone at this age is like an external self-soother.
Yeah.
Whether it's for boredom, stress, comparing yourself, making your like validation, whatever. And the closer it is, the more tempted you are, or the more reliant you are.
Yeah.
And so the farther away it is, the higher the likelihood that the kid is going to problem solve, critical think, self-soothe, like internally.
Yep.
Or use the resources in the room to figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also, if the phone is in the backpack, teachers have to do way more work to police that.
Yeah.
You know, versus if it's like you walk in the school door and you put your phone in this designated place at 8 o'clock, you don't get it until 3 o'clock or 3:30 or whatever, you know? So it's more work for the teachers if the phone is anywhere near the kid.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
So out of sight, out of mind. Okay. Phone ban. The other thing he said is that, like, if schools have a phone ban that's limited to class time only, it's pretty much useless, right? So, like, a lot of schools will say you can't have your phone out in class, but then they don't have a rule for outside of class, right?
Which is stupid.
Which is stupid because you're losing the social emotional connection piece, right? Between classes, recess, lunch, whatever.
Yeah, it's that, but it's also like now you're providing an opportunity for bullying.
Yep.
Now I have like I'm making a group on Instagram and like sending pictures that I made and like we're talking shit and now I'm playing in a fight like during lunch. Like that you're like literally it's like a breeding ground for fights, for like girl mess, social media, whatever. And so, yeah, it's that too.
Well, and then they're thinking about while they're in class is being able to get out of class and get their phone.
Can't wait.
You know?
Yep.
Okay. So something that he, like a misconception, okay, about phone bans that we've talked about before is a very common, response from parents is, well, what if there's an emergency? How am I going to get in touch with my kid? And he does talk about that in there.
Yeah.
And I like what he says. He says kids with phones might actually be less safe in an emergency because they're not listening to adults.
Yep.
And they're not paying attention to their surroundings.
Also,
which is so true.
Yeah. And if that phone's not on silent, I mean, whatever. If that phone's not on silent and like heaven forbid there's someone in the building and that phone goes off, oh, I know where they are.
Exactly.
Like now you're like a smoking gun. Is that right?
Or if they're on their phone trying to call their mom.
Yeah, hey mom. Like,
you know?
Whatever. And like you've talked about like if there's an emergency, your kid's not like being like, let me call mom.
Right.
Real quick.
What is
like,
mom
what are you
gonna
do? Like you can't get in.
No.
Like what? Yeah. And like call the school, call the front desk.
Right.
If there is a home emergency or whatever. Right. Also, you can't call your kid during class. You think the teacher's like, pick it up.
Right.
Because your mom's calling? No.
Right. So it's like, you can't, I mean, parents need to think about like and it's like, how much are you putting your kid's brain at risk?
Yeah.
Just in case there's an emergency.
But this goes back to, this is an adult transference.
Yes.
Like your kid, you're worried about your kid because of the shit that you see on the news and whatever, and the Instagram and the world and whatever. So you're worried that if they don't have their cell phone that they may die.
Right.
I mean, most extreme. And that is not like a kid's perspective.
Right.
Or like that's what am I trying to say? Like you're transferring that anxiety onto the kid, and I just need to get in touch with them isn't actually what is going on in your head as a parent. You're like, oh my God, I'm freaking out.
Well, and that's parenting out of fear.
Yeah, correct.
And the fear is real, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a reasonable fear. We all worry about that.
Yeah.
But your kid having a phone at school doesn't make them safer.
No.
And it doesn't reduce their risk of something bad happening, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean,
it doesn't.
I wish I could say otherwise, but it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't.
And it becomes, okay, like I said, it's a kid's external way to soothe for whatever reason. And now it's the parent's external way to soothe their own anxiety as it relates to their kid's well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have like this double-edged sword of like, each one is reinforcing the other one.
Right.
And no one's able to like get their heads out of the clouds and see how damaging smartphones are.
Yeah.
Okay, so takeaways. What can schools do? I mean, we said, I agree. It's like you walk into the school and here's the box.
Yep.
And like each it could be 1,000 things. It could be like there are 2 teachers at each thing. It could be like your homeroom teacher collects everything and then gives it to the principal and it lives in the like that's easy. Phone-free schools, I don't think that's realistic. Like, I don't know. Kids aren't coming to school without a phone.
Right.
So, no. Can't eliminate.
My phone just
that was
always
a weird
going
noise.
off.
That was a weird
It's
noise.
the vibrating.
Consider eliminated all personal. That's not happening either.
I wish it would.
I mean, I wish it would. I would love a textbook. Like, and having, like, we used to have when I was in high school, was like in the library, there were like 5, maybe 6, like, desktop, is that what it was called? Desktop
computer.
And like one big ass printer. And it was like, if you forgot to like do your shit the night before, that like type up your paper, like we would flood that library, being like, hurry the fuck up! Like, we gotta type our paper. And like, that's what we had. So, I mean, you can go back to that, but that's just, it's not going to happen though.
Well, so he talks about, and this is another thing we've talked about. He talks about how, like, you know, you have to see where these big tech executives send their own kids to school and why, right?
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of them send them to schools that have 0 personal electronic devices.
I mean, I get that, but it's not,
And you know that they know more than we know.
No, totally.
Right? They know more than we know, and they're doing it for a reason.
Yeah, but that, it's like, it's sugar, whether it's, you know what I mean? It's like electron, it's like, they're not putting all the candy bars at the register for no reason.
Right.
You know, and it's the same premise with technology. They're not flooding schools with free tech for no reason.
100%.
It's like all of it. Now people are going to be
There's
like,
a bottom
Jesus,
dollar.
you're a MAHA, what is it? Make America Healthy Again person. And I'm not. But like, America is promoting, I would say, like, not mental, what is it called? Like mental illness? Not really, but like, not, what's the opposite of well-being? Like,
unwellness?
I don't know. Like, okay, like whether it's sugar or it's take an opioid or it's get an iPhone or watch this TV, here's an iPad, oh, but now we have a Kindle and now we have a Mac, and it's like, our country is like flooded with these things that aren't good for us.
Right.
And it's, you know, trickle down effect.
Yep.
And it's not like they know they don't send their kids to schools with all the tech, and they're not and
they're going to produce the tech and just
keep
feed it to
doing
everybody else.
Yeah, because that's where the money is.
Because that's how they make money.
Yeah, it's how they make money. I mean, it's a great business model. It's just making everyone sick. But it's like in that 1%, it's like what's their priority? Money. Like the American people who are sick are it's the same thing. It's proximity, just like the phone, just like mom when the babysitter comes. It's so fucking far away, and they're so detached from it because it's not their life. So it's not a priority.
Right.
What their priority is, money.
Right.
And that's what it is.
And then keeping their own kids safe.
Where they do have free play, which schools need to increase the amount of time.
Yep.
Like make 2 recesses, or I don't know, just like have a recess.
Yep.
And offer more enrichment activities.
Yes.
But then before we go, the Let Grow initiative.
Yes.
What is that?
So he talks about it in this book. So I can't remember if this is like something he started or he's just like kind of jumping on board with, but it's this initiative for schools to do phone bans.
Yeah.
Increase recess time. Increase extracurricular, or not extracurriculars, enrichments like art, music, PE, whatever.
Yeah.
And then also, it's the teachers assign kids homework that basically is like teaching them to do things independently. So like he gives some examples, like they'll give them homework like go home and for the next week do something that you've never done before on your own. Like go walk to the store by yourself, go walk the dog by yourself, go do the laundry for your family, like cook a meal by yourself. And it's, you know, he gives an age range, like it's for like older, lower school, middle school age kids.
Yeah.
But it's basically just like kind of like trying to turn back the clock, you know, and get kids to do things that kids used to do. Early kids, I mean, like
sweep
what we
the
used to
fucking
do.
chimney. I know.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I I like everything except for, I mean, like that stuff that he's saying do, like that kind of homework, like that should be just part of the house.
That should just be,
right?
yeah.
Like you should have homework on top of that.
Right.
Like I think, not a ton, but like.
No, it's not replacing homework.
Oh, I thought it was replacing homework.
No. It's not replacing homework.
Okay.
It's just like he's trying to get schools to do this initiative because a lot of parents are not doing that stuff on their own.
Oh, I
right?
see. Yeah.
So it's not replacing homework. It's just like an extra thing.
I got it. And then last thing, because you were talking about enrichment, like when I was in school, like there were so many different enrichment opportunities.
Yeah.
Chorus, band, like strings, photography, yearbook, advanced photography, like drawing. I don't know. There were just so like countless. And like, I think especially in the public school systems, like the younger ages, it's like art, PE, band.
Yeah.
Art, PE, band.
And that's probably
and
it.
that's like it. And then they have like clubs kind of, but it's
they've stripped like most schools have stripped all that away to put in more
academic rigorous
more
work.
science, more math, more English.
And it's really more English and math because that's the only thing that academia care about.
Right. Thinking that like that was going to, I mean, that goes all back to that No Child Left Behind, all that bullshit. Thinking that was going to make us perform better as a country. Yeah. And it's been the complete opposite result.
Although something did just come out.
What?
It said that kids nationally scored like I gotta look it up after this and I'll say it like in the next episode, but I'll look it up. It's like they scored better than like ever in the past like X year or something.
Oh damn.
I know. I gotta look it up,
my argument.
But I'm sure it's like fake news.
Yeah, total fake news.
Total fake news.
Don't listen to that, y'all.
Yeah. Okay. Do it. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Little Brain Campaign.
Please like, subscribe, and follow.
See you next time.